Hi, I'm Suzanne Bontempo, Program Coordinator for the Our Water, Our World program, and I've been invited to talk to you about building healthy soils. What I'm going to share with you this afternoon is what is the Our Water, Our World program. I'm going to talk a little bit about watersheds and water quality and how that's actually related. And I'll briefly discuss the principles of integrated pest management. Then we're going to dive right into soil basics, what healthy soils can do for your garden, how to buy soil, soils and climate, and then a few online resources that I thought might be helpful. So what is the Our Water, Our World program? Our Water, Our World is a program designed to bring awareness between pesticides and water quality while providing education on less toxic pest management. We provide integrated pest management education to the public in partnership with retail stores that sell pesticides and always sponsored by local pollution prevention agencies. You might recognize our materials such as the kiosk on the left with fact sheets, these informational brochures that discuss less toxic pest management for different topics such as ants or aphids, rats and mice, yellow jackets, and so forth. And you might also recognize the little blue tags that we place to identify less toxic pesticides for use around the home and garden that you can find at your local garden centers, home improvement stores, and hardware stores. For more information, you can find all of this information at the Our Water, Our World website, which is ourwaterourworld.org. So I always like to start by sharing what do watersheds have to do with water quality and our gardens. Well, Our Water, Our World is all about keeping Our Water, Our World is all about keeping our waterways free and clean of toxic pesticides. I like to draw the connection between watersheds and our gardens and the similarities that whenever water falls on our property, similar to a watershed, it will flow to the nearest creek, or in the case of our property, sometimes it's a storm drain. And while that water is flowing, it's picking up any residuals from pesticides or synthetic fertilizers and other chemicals that we may have used around the property. So how are watersheds related to water quality? Well, Our Water, Our World is all about keeping our waterways clean and free of toxic chemicals. We want to draw attention to the direct connection between we as consumers, what we are using around our properties and our gardens and our yards in the form of chemicals and maybe fertilizers, and how easily those chemicals and synthetic fertilizers can get into our waterways when we have rain, or if we have broken irrigation system, or if we've overwatered an area. That excess water is going to flow off our property, bringing with it any of those residuals of those chemicals, and moving towards and into a local creek, or in this case, over the sidewalk and into a storm drain, which then goes directly to our local waterways without getting filtered through that process. So we teach integrated pest management, and integrated pest management is a decision-making process that uses science-based strategies and allows us to look at the system as a whole, be it the home or the garden, in this case, the garden. And when we see a problem, oftentimes it's symptoms of another problem. So it allows us to get a little curious and ask a few questions, like what really is going on? What is this problem? And then from there, is this a problem can we live with it? Is it going to be short-lived? Will it resolve itself? And another component of integrated pest management is pest prevention. It's preventing the pests from happening before they occur. Also, proper identification, making sure we can identify what the problem is, because if we're unable to identify that problem, it'll be really difficult to solve that problem. And if action steps are needed, in integrated pest management, they're called controls. So cultural controls, which is bolstering the health of the garden. Mechanical controls are the tools we use to manage pest problems. Biological controls are the beneficial living organisms that help manage pest problems, such as ladybugs, to eat aphids. And then chemical controls, which are the pesticides. We always want to use these as a last resort. We always want to use eco-friendly and less toxic options. But if we've already exercised all of the other steps, we also might want to give ourselves permission to just remove that plant and find something else that would grow in that space with less problems. And how this is related is that healthy soils equal healthy plants equal less pests. When we can increase the health of the soil, when we can employ those cultural controls, we can prevent a lot of pest problems. And that's how integrated pest management plays into the system. So when we're increasing the health of our soil, we are reducing pest problems. So what is soil? Let's just have a brief overview. Soil, the components of soil are made up of about 25% air, about 25% water, about 45% mineral particles, which leaves about 5% organic matter. That organic matter is really important. That's what helps us grow healthy or good soil. So if you've had that experience where you're in a garden and you're like, gosh, this is really good soil, it's because we're looking at about 5 and upwards to 10% organic matter as part of that soil, the components of that soil. Soil is then identified by texture. So if someone's ever asked, what kind of soil do you have? They're really asking you, what's the texture of your soil? Soil texture is made up of a combination between sand, silt, and clay. Sand being the largest particles, which offer the largest pore sizes or air spaces. And then the other side of that spectrum is going to be the clay, which is very, very tiny particles that are literally stacked on top of each other, which offer very little space in between. All of our soil is going to be a combination between sand, silt, and clay, silt being right in the middle, which with medium-sized particles and medium-sized pore spaces. Now, we can't change the texture of our soil, but we can certainly change the structure of our soil. And the structure of our soil is how all these components play into relate to each other, the assembly of the aggregates. And what we want is to be able to create soil that really holds together really well, that helps those root systems grow and expand with ease, that has air particles, that has space for nutrients, but also is going to allow water to infiltrate and evaporate out with ease as well. So healthy soils for a healthy garden include the food component. So we want to increase that organic matter in the form of food for the soil. Okay, healthy soil is full of life. It's full of bacteria and fungus and vertebrates, and all of these are really important in relationship to that soil. The living organisms in the soil eat that organic matter, transforming it into nutrients available for your plants. So the root systems can expand and grow and be able to access those nutrients on an as-need basis. We also are improving the water holding capacity. So when we add compost to the soil, we're actually increasing the water infiltration. We're able to create good soil structure so that water now can infiltrate, not too fast and not too slow, but in a way that it is going to allow that soil to be more like a sponge, but in a way that allows the soil not to become too heavy with water. There's still air spaces so that the roots can take in moisture in a very healthy way. Water is then going to easily, it soaks in the soil with more ease instead of running off or pooling, which will prevent pollutants getting into our waterways. Healthy soil for healthy gardens also includes the health of the plants. Plants that have a consistent food and water will be less stressed and healthier. So when we can add compost to that soil, we're increasing that soil structure so that the water can reach the root systems on a molecular level, as well as feeding the microbiology around those root zones so those roots can access the nutrients on an as-need basis. And when we have healthy plants that are not stressed, that are very comfortable, they are less attractive to pests and diseases and can defend themselves from mild infestations of these pests and diseases when they do arrive. So adding compost to the soil to increase the soil health is a win-win for not only the benefits of the microbiology in the soil, we're holding on to water, we're watering more efficiently and more effectively, and we're also increasing the health of the plants to fend themselves against pests. So how do we build healthy soils? Well, as I mentioned, we're going to add compost, but we're also going to feed with organic fertilizers. We're going to protect those soils with mulch. We're going to grow cover crops. If we grow food and we have areas of the garden that might be bare, since we're in between crops, we always want to have something growing in the form of cover crops is ideal. We're going to allow for more water infiltration. We're going to increase the permeable surfaces around our property. We're going to avoid pesticides, and we're going to support the garden ecology by increasing diversity above and below the soil. So compost is organic matter that has been eaten and processed by that bacteria, that fungus, those microbes, worms, and other decomposers. Adding compost to your soil will improve the soil structure, as I've shared, also increase that water retention, also increase the microbiology. So these are all very important components that are going to increase the health of the soil. But not only does it increase the health of the soil in those ways, it also is going to balance the pH levels, help recycle the nutrients, reduce the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and then also fight pathogens and bad bacteria in the soil. So how do we use compost? Well, we're going to amend that soil, those planting beds or those containers at time of planting. So when we're adding new plants to the soil, be it a container or in the ground or a raised bed, we're going to mix 1 to 2 inches of compost into the top, let's say 3 inches of soil. And that's a great way to integrate compost into your existing soil. Now, for plants that are already established in your garden, it's great to top dress or side dress around those plants, focusing a good inch or two of compost right above the soil around their root zone. Okay. And then over time, that compost will integrate into the soil as you water, and over time as the microbiology integrates it for you. We can also add compost in the form of compost tea as a foliar spray or also as a soil drench around those root zones. And then understand that many liquid fertilizers kind of act like compost tea in the fact that they're really feeding the microbiology, which is going to increase the health of that soil, particularly around the root zone of our plants. When we buy soil or compost, not all of us have the luxury of creating compost on site. or have space where we can receive a truckload of bulk compost from our local garden supply. So oftentimes we'll see bags of material. There's many different brands on the market. This is just a few of the common ones we might see locally. But I wanted to share that planting mix and soil conditioner, garden compost, soil amend, all of these types of products are designed to be mixed into your existing soil about 50-50. These contain organic materials that add nutrients, help retain water, break up hard soil, and improve the drainage. Whereas potting mixes and potting soils, these are designed for pots, containers, and raised beds. These are blends of that contain minerals and organic materials that add aeration, add water holding capacity, structure, and nutrients. So the takeaway here is that potting soil is for pots, and soil amendment or compost or soil conditioner is going to be what we add to existing soil. And then raised bed mix will have those terms on it. And beyond the garden, understand that healthy soils can help as a climate solution. They draw down and sequester carbon. They build resilience against times of drought and floods. They protect against soil desertification and erosion, and ultimately reduce stormwater runoff and filter out pollutants. So when we can add compost to the soil, again, it's a win-win, not only for your plants and for our gardens, but it's also going to help us to save water, use water more efficiently and more wisely, as well as increase the health of our garden ecology and beyond. For more information on online pest management resources, we have the Our Water, Our World website, the UCIPM website, and then for pesticides specifically, I like to reference the National Pesticide Information Center. Thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you again.